recording? Great.
Yeah, he's
good.
done it. Yeah.
Yeah. James Worth, where are you from, James?
Hi, George. James
Oh,
Worth,
Safer
Associate
Sphere
at
as well.
Safe.
Excellent. It's interesting. So, are you both in the same sort of area, or because I know Safer Sphere, you cover different things, don't you?
We're all on the BR principal designer side of the business.
Oh, right. Okay. Principal designer CDM or principal designer building regs?
BR building regulation principal design side. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah, well, I've been speaking with Jonathan before, but it's also I think it's his colleague that was doing that. So that's good. Who else is from Safer Sphere before I embarrass myself?
Me
Paul.
too.
Okay.
Too, yeah.
All right. Okay. Good. Okay. Well, I'm pleased that you found this worth attending. That's great. Thank you. Craig McWilliam, where are you from, Craig? Sorry if I should know you.
No, no, not at all. Like I'm with Wheatley Homes. I run the building pathology team there for the existing properties, and Connor Stevenson's introduced me to this group.
Brilliant. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I think Connor's mentioned he was going to do that. Debbie, you're from Cotway, are you?
Potsway Housing, yes.
Brilliant. Okay. And Tom Porter, I think you're from East.
Hi, George. Yeah, I'm from Wythenshawe Housing.
Yeah. And Yassine Luckman.
I'm from Safer Sphere as well. Sorry.
Oh, cool. Okay, no problem. Good. Okay. Well, Richard, could we skip back to, because there's obviously a lot of people here that weren't able to attend or didn't attend the first meeting, where we sort of set things out, as it were. So I wondered if we could. Shall I just explain what we are doing with
Yes. Yeah.
So right. So what we're doing with both BIM for housing and also BIM in asset management is we're trying to find ways that information management in general and the golden thread in particular can help address real world problems and can make it easier for people to make the right decisions. So an important part of what we're doing with that is to look at the what's developed over the last few years as the golden thread, and how we can then use the information that's being collected for different purposes to make it easier to address challenges like the new requirements for Awaab's law. So just before we jump into Awaab's law itself, what I'd like to do is just share with you the work that the wider group is doing to see if you're interested in contributing to that. We had a workshop yesterday morning on retrospective fire strategies, because what's been identified over the last few months is that, in particular, the role of principal designer building regs and a lot of the certainly the residential gateway work, if you're carrying out a fire risk assessment, you don't have a current fire strategy, it pretty much undermines the whole point of having a fire strategy, fire risk assessment. That's what I'm told. And one of the big challenges is that the fire engineers that are available to do that type of work are few and far between, because there's just not enough of them. And the ones that are available, they're not too keen to take on some of the risk. So what we've been doing over the last few months is talking with them about ways that we could make their job simpler and therefore less expensive, and also make it so that we can be a bit more standardized and rigorous in that. So the fire risk assessment, sorry, the fire strategy plan, we had a meeting yesterday morning on that, which you're welcome to get an update on and even watch it if you want to, which was pretty successful. And what we're doing is saying, okay, because Awaab's law is obviously at the moment the focus is on damp and mold, but it's also on other risks like electrical and fire safety that need to be addressed as well. So rather than the information being collected uniquely for Awaab's law, we think it makes a lot of sense for that to be captured at the same time as other work is being carried out, so that you've got something to base things on. So what I'd like to do is just explain what we're doing at the moment. What we're seeking to do is to make it so that the information that's being collected for the golden thread is actually available and can be reused for Awaab's law. So, having, for example, proper floor plans of where a particular flat is, and also how it's connected to the rest of the building is an important thing. So we're going through. We've got a group looking at this at the moment, which I'd be interested in anybody that's interested in contributing to it. So the golden thread itself, what we want to do is define what the golden thread is, and people think of it just as being on residential, but actually it's all types of buildings really. Although it's not statutory required for that, but it's got to be electronic. It's got to look through the whole process, not a particular aspect. It's also got to be easily transferred when there's a change of ownership. So what we're really trying to do is to work out what the benefits are of it to the whole process. And in many ways, this is, again, part of making sure that design is fit for purpose and the implementation. And what we're saying is that it's like a DNA that's working through an ecosystem of different solutions, but making them all work together. And it's collaborative. So one of the outcomes I would like to see from this Awaab's Law group is people coming together, maybe a social landlord, a technology company, some people that actually carry out the work, repairs people, and people that are maybe doing surveys like Safersphere, to be able to draw all of those things together so that we can come up with some really robust working solutions that can then be repeated. Because what we're finding is that people are doing stuff uniquely on every single project, and that confuses the heck out of supply chains because they're being asked for different information from different people. And we believe that that could be very useful when addressing what is a growing group of ambulance chasers that are going to be chasing residents to sign up. And I live in a normal, in a private house, but I got a call yesterday just randomly asking if I got problems with damp and mold and whether I wanted any help in reporting them to the landlord. And it was a law firm that was doing that. And the fact that they're phoning me, and I'm definitely not in any list of any social landlord, it sounds to me as though that's just a massive, it's another PPI that's coming down the line. So what I'm interested in trying to do from a collaborative point of view is seeing if we can put together some good practice indeed best practice that people can buy into. And I think collectively, social landlords can then be better protected if if people are working in a consistent way. That's my suggestion that I'd like to discuss in a moment. We've formed this group called the Golden Thread Task Force, which anybody's able to join as long as they are adopting and understanding what the principles are of what we're doing, and a lot of it is around quality management. So why is information needed? Who's gathering it and how? Who benefits from it, so that we can then put some tangible value on it. And the way in which we're looking at this is in the information management world of property. There's a series of stages that most projects go through. So what we've then tried to do is then map those activities either for project work, not necessarily just new build, but project work, and also from an asset management point of view, to a series of different activities that people provide, and then look at how those then result in some tangible value. So how can we look at this from a point of view of standardization, auditability, reducing risk and cost across the life cycle, making it easier for supply chains to provide the information that's needed, digital records of what's needed. I think that's going to be absolutely, there's no question that's going to be really critical. Also looking at things from an operations perspective. So how do, what is the best methodology of dealing with damp and mold, for example? And then how can we make that so that we can automate the process so it becomes more scalable going forward? The key thing that we're saying is that it's likely that the information is already being collected for a different purpose. So, for example, we're dealing with councils and social landlords where they've been collecting this information from a building safety perspective to satisfy the regulator on that front, but they've probably not been capturing information. There's probably another 5% or 10% can be added to address the damp and mold side of things. So let's see how we can add that to what's already being collected so that we're not wasting what's already been done. And we've been sort of guesstimating as a team some examples of what the financial benefits are. So if you're interested in joining that discussion, which is more of a commercial discussion rather than a technical one, what are the benefits that can be fed up to maybe senior management? Then would you, Richard, what should we call this? What would you?
Right, is this a different one than the other golden thread?
Yeah, this one's about benefits. So it's the financial benefits. It is the golden thread, but it's specifically about the benefits of the golden thread.
It's something to do with business case then, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, if you like. Yeah.
Right, so do you want to call it business case?
Fine.
Okay, well, so anybody who's interested in getting down to the nitty gritty of this, of trying to actually put some real figures in there, what we're looking at doing is drilling down into each of those topics there, into some granular detail, so that we're breaking it down into even down to tasks. And if anybody's interested in trying and helping us to put a price on if this task is accomplished or whether it is done or not done, what's the difference? Put business case in the chat. We've got quite a few people interested in that, and it's where it needs to go, isn't it? We need to have this some sort of finances around it.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend any time on this, but just to show the level of detail that we're going into here, we've got there for making sure that all of the stakeholders have expressed properly what they need. These are different tasks, individual tasks, as Richard was saying, that we're building into this so that there's a step-by-step stage of, how are we going to capture the information that's needed in a consistent way? So we've gone into this in some detail so that we can actually put some sort of value against that, or a cost against it as well, and also a cost of not doing it. Yeah, so that was it really.
So
Richard,
business case, if you're interested in doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we thought it was a good idea to recap on the last meeting. A, because there are a lot of new people on there, and B, because we know people will have been thinking about it outside the meeting or after the meeting and may have something else they want to add in. So I'm just going to share this. And there you go. Can you see that? Everybody see that okay?
That's it. Yeah, I can now, Richard.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So what was the purpose of the meeting? The purpose was to explore practical, scientific and operational challenges of responding to damp and mold under Awaab's law, focusing on whether current industry capability, data and competence are sufficient to meet statutory response times while genuinely improving resident health outcomes. Okay, so I'm going to go through these, and then at the end of each section, I'm going to ask you if you've got any ideas or something we've missed. I don't want to get into a big discussion about what we've already said, more about if you want to add something into it. So key themes and discussion areas: the nature of the problem, science and building physics. Excuse me, only around 30% of mold is visible. Most exists within the building fabric. Mold is driven by a combination of humidity, temperature, ventilation, and time, particularly where surfaces reach dew point. Traditional chemical wipe down approaches often fail because they do not kill mold at root. Hydrochloric acid based remediation was presented as a potentially safe and more effective alternative, supported by laboratory evidence and cross-sector use. It's used in healthcare, food and prisons. Okay, anybody think we've missed something there in terms of the nature of the problem? Anybody can add anything on there into that? Alex, how about you? Because I'm not sure, I don't think you were at that meeting, were you?
No, I wasn't at the workshop, so I'm not sure I'm ideally placed to comment on this. But
I'm just thinking you probably have some ideas of that you might add to the nature of the problem.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. No, it's just
no. I think I want to stay away from the occupancy issues and use issues because we're trying not to go there. This is the science and building physics side of things. So I don't.
Well, we will be going on to occupancy.
Yeah.
Is it sorry to interrupt? Is it not a technical problem as well, where things aren't being installed correctly? The existing technical standards, approved document C is a bit outdated. Does that not sort of lead to the problem?
Yeah, we're going to move. I think we're going to come to competence and standards shortly. But
please make sure that you record that because that was a good one. Was that Chris that said that?
Yeah.
Or James? Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
The only point that I would like to raise is relative to understanding the core issue of the hazard. I think I mentioned last time that there is still indicatively this poor knowledge of what mold is and how it's cause and effect. And I think that when we talk about the education and training and the background information needed, and although it's not relative to what you're saying now in regards to the designing out of the issues, we do need to understand that the problem is more guided by the fact that the conditions that are prevalent and the mold itself. And as soon as you realise that, and then you realise that if you can remove the hazard, it's removing of the hazard, and the continual exposure, that you can then buy time for landlords and others to do the remedial works that are required for those properties that are affected by Awaab's law. And don't forget, the timescales for doing it are quite tight.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I think you'll find we're actually going to cover some of that, certainly.
But please don't, again, please don't lose that, because yeah.
Okay,
That's great, Bill.
diagnosis, technology, and tech data. Environmental sensors can predict mold risk via humidity, temperature, and dew point before mold becomes visible, but no single sensor diagnoses mold in isolation. Effective diagnosis requires multiple data sources, IoT monitoring, thermography, visual inspection, surveys, and contextual knowledge. Poor historic IoT deployments often failed due to lack of skills to interpret the data, not lack of the data of itself. Anybody got anything on that one? Nick?
I would agree there's an element of interpretation of data, but I think having worked for a couple of different IoT providers, and now I've got some competition colleagues here as well, I would probably say this is more down to lack of buy-in from and lack of agreement of what's actually been trying to achieve out of IoT deployments. More often IoT deployments fail, not because there's a lack of ability to interpret the data, there's a lack of workflow or process or willingness to do something with the data and the insight is provided. So there's a fundamental breakdown there.
Right, so the data, you're saying the data is generally interpreted correctly. It's just that nobody does anything about it.
Basically,
yeah. Okay. Oh, just to be clear, we're recording this. We shall get a link to the recording and a summary and a podcast, but we do that rather than make notes on what you've said. It won't be lost, it will be included. So
and
okay. Sorry.
I'll be open and candid. There's blood on both sides of the fence there. Where both the vendor and as well as the housing provider. It's incumbent upon them to make sure they're agreeing what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve here. Too often, I've seen people just buy a handful of sensors, throw them in, and think it's going to fix things. It's not. You've got to make sure it dovetails into appropriate processes and workflows off the back of it. If you don't do that, then it simply won't work. You have to do something with the insight and the data you get. That's a simple truism.
Okay.
Nick, if you've got a form of words that you could add in there, you could put that in the chat. It's going to make it a bit easier for us to make sure that we're not misinterpreting what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think it's a really important point.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so let's competence and standard gaps. There are no national occupational standards for mold, despite clear health impacts. Widespread issues persist: non-ducted fans, untested extraction, poorly maintained ventilation, and non-compliant retrofits. Participants questioned whether 24-hour and 5-day response requirements are realistic without structured triage and better diagnostics. Okay, anybody got anything on that they think we should be adding in there? No.
Without repeating myself, I think one of the key elements is having the ability to respond, get in, and see what the hazard actually is, and what the impact is on the people in the property, and then taking the appropriate measure, which is as best remove the hazard.
So that is reporting and access, isn't it?
Yes.
It being reported to the relevant person and them having access properly to actually do something.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next one: housing provider and resident complexity. Underheating and fuel poverty were identified as primary drivers of damp and mold. Resident behaviour: fan isolation, closed trickle vents, indoor drying, influences outcome, but should not be simplistically blamed. Effective solutions require two-way engagement, education and feedback loops, rather than enforcement alone. Anybody got anything to add into that?
Graham, is that where your comment should really sit?
Well, I think it could probably sit in both of them, to be honest, because it's the actual response to, and don't forget, the customer could say, "I've got mold in my property," and ring up the landlord, or it could be that somebody goes from the landlord and says, "Oh, there's mold here. We need to deal with that for you." So it does sit in both boxes in some respects.
Actually, on reflection, I think you're right that it's really under the competency and standards area that what you described earlier. So is that something that, I mean, I personally think that's a really important point, that there's an agreed sort of methodology of dealing with things. Connor, I know that you've done work in this area. Do you think that's a logical thing to do, to have some sort of standardized response that could be communicated to people?
Yeah, funnily enough, it's actually something. So I provided you, which I'm sure you'll touch on later on in the call, about what the response, sort of simplistic workflow of what a response is when somebody complains. But Craig actually brought up during a call with him internally about the requirements for having a separate but sort of dovetailing in workflow about trying to predict or actually look for mould or other hazards as part of Awaab's law. I think it's something that he'd mentioned it again yesterday on a different call, something that they're looking to do in the building pathology team. So yeah, I think that makes sense, and it's something that at least internally and Wheatley that we're working on. I think for this sort of the Awaab's law challenge thing, and this, it's maybe something that we can come up with a workflow and take that to industry as a sort of best practice as well.
How could we go about doing that? You know, I mean, I can imagine there's going to be all sorts of people carrying out this type of work that really, you know, have been doing some very different type of work previously. You know, there's a whole industry, as I mentioned earlier, that's going to be growing from this. I can imagine.
You mean cowboys?
You might say that. I couldn't possibly comment.
Well, the number of painting and decorating companies that now are mold specialists is amazing.
Yeah,
so
what you need is an audited standard. That's what you need. One single audited standard that reflects across the sector. So in the food industry, you've got governing agencies like the BRC who will govern and control the processes and procedures required for hygiene standards within those environments. So what's the difference? And you've got the same problem within your environment, within mold. You don't have a prerequisite standard of control that is clear and directive about how to deal with it. And there's your first problem.
Well, I suppose that's what Awaab's law is trying to be in the Housing Ombudsman.
But it needs to be clear, very clear and very concise. And you should be looking at other industries for how they follow their own processes and procedures to dealing with the problem from start to finish.
See, that's where it gets into the kind of the complicated side when I was speaking before about the actual training and what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And because you probably we have a 3 standard approach to it: minor, substantial, and severe mold outbreaks. And the reason that we've done it like that is that we can train people to do minor, and customers can do them themselves within their own homes. And we do it with St Ledger Homes at the moment, where they supply the solution to the customers to deal with the minor ones. When it gets a little bit more severe, then you're into a different ball game altogether. Now, if you're working under HHSRS guidelines, then some of the mold that we see, they say, well, it's insignificant. You don't really have, and there is a blurring of the standards, as David was explaining, because there is no standard to it.
No. No, you need one clear-cut standard that you can all agree to for Awaab's law. That is the standard that people have to follow.
So is that something that there's an opportunity for us as BIM for Housing to help pull together?
Yeah, I think that's almost what we're trying to achieve with particularly the challenge stuff. I think that's really what it's really the main goal of what we're trying to achieve. Right?
Okay, we're going to come on to next steps a bit just at the bottom of the document. So hang on to that, hold that thought till then, because this is really what we want to be doing is stepping forward, isn't it? Okay, digital records and the golden thread. Strong support emerged for digital records, 360-degree photography and spatial models to capture context, audit interventions, and link issues to asset spaces and past works. Participants highlighted the need for learning loops, capturing what failed, why it failed, and how recurrence can be prevented. Okay, anything anybody wants to add on digital records and the golden thread? No?
I've done some more work on that, which I can just share.
Yeah.
I've taken your document, Connor, and just asked ChatGPT what documents and information should a social landlord have to protect against the claims. I think this is an important thing to just explain what we're doing. We're using AI quite a lot now, but we're setting guardrails to be able to control what it's coming back with, because the answers that it comes back with can be completely wrong if you don't put the right sort of context and you don't do the right prompts. But it can be quite good at pulling this together. So I'll just show you what we've come up with. So this is showing the required documents. I'll just scroll down this quickly. So this is where I'm coming from, that we can build this into a set of O&M information that we can then make intelligent to be able to do queries on, to be able to say, do I have the information for this? So this has taken what was up here and then aligned it to the golden thread principles, and then given us a structure to work to. So this is the sort of approach. So if anybody's interested in getting involved in that, then we could have another dedicated session for an hour or so. So I don't know what we call that. Maybe
guidance.
It's more the structure of the fine. Yeah. Whatever. But
for our purposes, let's call that a guidance document.
Great. Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I want to come back on that when I've just finished these, when we get on to next steps.
Of course. Sorry.
Yeah. No, not at all. Because I've just had some thoughts while we were going through that. Let me just share this again. There we go. Right. So digital. Okay. So industry collaboration and systemic learning. BIM for Housing proposed mirroring its fire safety work by developing a damp and mold best practice frameworks, shared diagnosis libraries, and peer-reviewed guidance. The black box reporting concept, just to explain, BIM for Housing and BIM for Asset Management have a website whereby you can report individual instances of mold, what the consequences were of it, and how it was resolved, if it was resolved, down leading up to major crises with a mold appearance. Can't think of the right word. I was going.
It's not been used for mold yet. It's certainly been set up to be able to use for mold.
Well,
it was principally set up for doing fire stopping and things
absolutely,
like that.
Absolutely. But the mechanism, the mechanics
Exactly.
of it absolutely works for mold. Absolutely. And that's something that would actually be a good way of us gathering your experience. It can be anonymous, of actual occurrences and how they were dealt with, for us to put into we'll call it the output document, the guidance. Anyway, the black box reporting concept was positioned as a potential triage and learning mechanism aligned with CROSS to capture anonymized defects and systemic failures.
Does anybody not know what CROSS is?
Yeah, I don't know what CROSS is. I should know, George and Richard, sorry, but I don't.
No, it's all right. No. So CROSS was set up to do structural safety years ago. And it's basically a neutral, anonymous body that was actually run by the Institute of Civil Engineers, I think it was, to be able to get whistleblowers or people to, they don't like that term, whistleblowers, but broadly that's what it is, problems, so that you could then have experts working out what went wrong and why it went wrong, and also to try and solve it from happening again. So when Judith Hackett started her work, she actually got them to also take on fire safety, and I'm suggesting to them that we could also do the same with the with damp and mold, because it seems to me to be a symptom of something that quite often is structural problems, if that helps.
David.
Yes. Are you aware of the BSI standard for the management of moisture in buildings, code of practice?
I'm sure there's lots of BSI standards actually, David, but I'm not specifically.
There's specifically 525. Hang on. 5250 2021 management of moisture in buildings, code of practice.
Could you just put those in the chat so that we can incorporate those?
I think you're frozen, David.
Okay.
But if you can hear us, David, if you can put that in the chat.
It covers key.
No, we can't hear you. Can't hear you, mate.
Yeah, well, I will. Key aspects of 5250, scope, purpose. Say again.
Yeah, you're breaking
You're
up.
breaking up, David. We can't hear you at all, really.
Yeah. Okay. So
okay. So if you can put those in the chat.
Signals.
Yeah, David, we can't hear anything at all. Literally, it's just noise. Sorry.
It's breaking up badly.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else got anything to add into that quickly? Industry collaboration and systemic learning. Okay. Core insights. Damp and mold.
Would you all use the black box? Does that sound a good idea, by the way? For people to report things. silence.
No, I'll speak on it. So yeah, it's one of the most powerful things of being involved with this group, to be completely honest with you. So I think it's the ability to, have that anonymous reporting to be able to, as a sector, be informed about what's going wrong and um, and get that insight. What I don't know is how the results of a black box report are ever investigated or distributed, the sort of the findings or outcomes. I've never put one in, fortunately.
Yeah, and to be fair, we're not, as you know, we're not funded. So basically, it's a matter of capturing the information that then is visibly available to the rest of the community. And what we are doing, I've had a couple of conversations with Cross about them taking that information. I've not specifically spoken to them about damp and mold, but they've got limited resources. But at the end of the day, if it's recorded, we've got an opportunity to at least learn from it, haven't we?
And certainly we can use that in the output from this.
Exactly.
Okay, core insights. Damp and mold are systemic asset management problems, not isolated defects. Cleaning alone is insufficient. Root cause diagnosis is essential. Data exists, but capabilities, standards, and integration lag behind legislation. Without structured workflows and competence frameworks, Awaab's law risks becoming reactive, legalistic, and unsustainable. Anybody, we've covered some of this actually already, haven't we? Anybody got any anything to add into core insights? No. Okay, so the next one is agreed direction of travel. Well, I've got a suggestion for that. And we're going to come on to the suggestions from last meeting. But what I'm suggesting is George has produced that early stage template, whatever you want to call it, for guidance. Would it be an idea, give all the things that I'm going to read out now and your ideas, would it be an idea to have making that guidance serviceable by feeding into it what I'm going to read right now and your ideas, and having that as an endpoint, having that as a target, having that as an aim? Anybody?
I would agree with that. Does
Anybody disagree?
Yeah.
Anybody disagree with that as an aim? That's always the best way of doing it. Anybody not want an ice cream? Okay, right. So that's good.
Too cold for ice cream, sir.
Okay, so agreed direction of travel. This is from the last meeting, which I think would funnel into that guide. Right, develop standardized triage and diagnostic pathways. I think that's a really important point, isn't it? The triage. Build a shared knowledge and evidence base for landlords and practitioners. Align damp and mold management with golden thread principles. Use collaborative challenge projects to prototype scalable and auditable solutions. Okay, that's what we've got from last meeting. Who wants to add something into agreed direction of travel, which can mean how to get there as well?
I'd like to suggest something, and that is that I'm not sure how many social landlords we've actually got on the call. I realise that we've got weekly. Are there any other social landlords on the call?
I think there's another two.
Hotsway Housing.
Oh, of course. Sorry, Debbie. Yeah. Anybody else?
Wythenshawe. Tom was from Wythenshawe, I think.
Right. Great. Okay. So
Chris Rutter might be from. Is Chris Rutter from Atterbury? Or was that a different Chris?
Has he gone off to get a coffee? Dustin Hunter, where are you from, by the way? Are you another one from Safersphere?
Yeah, we're from Safersphere. Yeah,
Sorry, I apologise if I was repeating that. Yeah,
that's okay.
yeah. So I guess what I was going to say, Richard, is if we could get from people their suggested workflow. I'm going to show it with Connor's permission. I'm going to show the one that that he's provided. But I think in all fairness, we ought to be also getting feedback from the other social landlords as well, as many as possible, really, because we want to have something that has been thought through, you know, and challenged a little bit. I think you would agree with that, Connor. So, Debbie, have you? I also realise one of the challenges that I've found in addressing this is that the social landlords I'm dealing with are largely the people that I'm working with, largely people that have been involved with fire safety and building safety, right? And I thought there'd be a closer connection with the damp and mold side of things, but certainly in my experience, that isn't the case. It's generally somebody quite different that's involved in it, and they're not thinking, or certainly the ones I've spoken to aren't thinking of that in such a joined up way, possibly because it's more resident engagement that's being driving it rather than building safety, albeit I think it is part of building safety. Does anybody have an observation on that?
Yeah, George, can I come in on that? Part of the weekly, I don't know if it's the same in the other social housings, but we're not doing any FRAs in internal flats, occupied flats. We're only doing them, or homes, we're only doing them in communal areas. So you might find that's why there's not a correlation there. And also at the moment, a lot of the mold issues, it's reactive. So it's when it's incoming calls, it's reports of that, and then we're almost reacting off the back of that. So that's potentially where a breakdown might be at the moment. So that might be something we need to look at.
I think that probably is true. I mean, Nick, you're talking to a lot of social landlords, aren't you? What would you say that what Craig said there is possibly common?
I'll be honest with you. I was writing in the chat, so I wasn't listening.
Sorry.
Properly. Can you restate the question?
Yeah,
Cool,
Craig, would you mind just repeating that briefly? Because I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, all I was saying is that we're not, although we have fire engineers or we have fire inspectors working for us, at the moment we don't do any internal FRAs. We're only doing stage 2s in communal areas. So trying to connect this together at the moment isn't happening, and that might be why you're not getting that correlation between the damp and mold reporting and the fire issues. Now, when we're in doing surveys, we're obviously capturing, because you've then got the opportunity to be in properties, then we are taking those inspections. And the Connor's designed a survey where when his guys are in, they are capturing this information, but you're in there for a reason. You're not doing that's not a constant check or a revised check. So a lot of this at the moment is reactive. So that was the point I was raising.
I think that's sorry. What you said there right at the end, Craig, I think is really important, and that is that if I can understand that people are looking at it as a resident engagement thing, it's coming in on the help desk, and it's therefore reactive rather than proactive. But the danger with that is that if we've got an army of lawyers that are hoovering up complaints, then your reactive response or following it in that way, I think everybody's going to get pulled all over the place.
100%. And that's kind of goes back to what Connor was saying at the start. That's what we're in the process of trying to install, something where we have, just an example, we have 4 key stage visits a year within a tenant for it to visit a tenant. Now, within those 4 key stages, we want to include inspections within that, but then there arises the issue of a competent person going in and doing that because they're of different backgrounds. It may be a housing officer, it may be an electrician, something going in and doing smoke detector inspections. So you're right, absolutely right in what you're saying. We'll try to look at analysis just now where we're not getting cases of mould reported, because then that's a red flag to us, because we're saying, well, why? There's another build type somewhere else across Scotland that has that. Why is that same build type not? So is it a case of people aren't reporting it? And do we now need to go and start actively going there and carrying out inspections? So what you've just mentioned is our biggest worry and issue at this moment in time.
And also where that flat is in context of other flats in the building as well. So what's above it, what's next door to it, and if the mould's on a certain wall, there's quite a possibility that it's going to be on the adjacent one, and it may well be coming through from. Yeah.
Debbie.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say we do the same. We do FRAs, but only on communals. But our damp and mould procedure does seem to be getting a lot of take up. But again, I think a lot of it is reactive. We did try monitors, but because the area we live in, we didn't have strong enough signals. So the data we got from it was very sporadic. So we've sort of ditched that for now. And we were putting those where we thought we would have the most mould issues going by build type. So we haven't had time to relook at whether there's something better. But cost is also something that we're driven by a lot.
Of course. We've got can I just interrupt? Well, we're talking about structure and stuff. Alex put into the chat that he shared at the November meeting the MHCLG, which had a high level process. Once we finish this, it's possibly worth Alex maybe going through that.
Yeah, I can do
George?
that. Yeah,
please. Yeah,
I think it's a good. We need a start point, don't we? Okay. So Graham.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Number one, what you've got to remember is that within social housing in particular, you visit a property to repair on average 3.5 times a year. So you've got 3.5 time visits there where people could be observant if they're trained in to know what they're looking for. We do an awful lot of training with our client base to create what we call mold awareness, and that mold awareness, they walk around the property, and that can include people like the gas engineer who's going doing the safety check, the electrician. So it covers the whole of the multitude of trades. Secondly, we've got social landlords now, Star Housing, which is Shropshire Town and rural, who've now put it under their compliance team so that they are sure that they've got the strong basis for ensuring that they're not stepping outside Awaab's law. And the last big point from me would be going back to the claimant side, and just as a matter of interest for George and his cold call, speaking with the directors of Devonshire's, who would do an awful lot of defending of social landlords in court, is that these chasers are just basically after big money. In one particular case, a £36,000 claimant that got passed by the court, the actual poor soul in the house that was very badly mold infested only got £1,000 out of the 36, which is absolutely disgusting when you think about it. The rest went in legal fees.
Yeah.
Crazy world, but that's why they're chasing it. It's money.
Nick.
I'll be honest, we've gone way off the thread now, so I'll put my hand down. So otherwise,
Okay, no worries. I want to come back to you, Nick, on what you said about using the food hygiene process.
Yeah.
Not really. Stevens.
Hi, yeah, hi. Yeah, so going back to what Debbie and Craig said, we've spoken over the last 2 years to probably about 100 social housing providers at different levels. We've attended quite a lot of shows over the last 2 years leading up to Awaab's Law to try and get a gauge on how they were going to address the problem. And as both said, a majority are being they're waiting till the problem happens, not being proactive. Where we know there's issues around cost, because if something's not happened yet, why should you pay, or why would you put a sensor in? So there's a lot of focus. I believe there's one housing association we're working with at the moment, and they've put £1 million to the side just for the next 12 months on top of their existing mold problems of what they think it's going to cost them over the next 12 months. But I'm sure someone's going to get a big calculator out one day soon, as Graham mentioned, some of these legal cases against the housing associations, and see what kind of fines they're going to get for breach of Awaab's law. And someone's then going to go, we should start really be putting more sensors in to get better insights. So we've got some private landlords who are doing it the other way. They're actually going, hang on a second, we need to start gathering data today, because we know Awaab's law is going to come in 2026. So we've been led to believe into the private sector, and they're going, okay, if I can look at my estate now and know which ones have the data to know which ones are at high risk, I can start taking action early. Or there's also the other factors around the social element, showing their tenants we're doing good, we're looking after you. But yeah, they're trying to calculate the cost again of actually putting in, thousands of sensors into people's homes, or even having them in there for a couple of months to say, okay, this one's no risk at all, or this one's a medium risk, or this one's a high risk, so they can start talking to those tenants before the law comes in. But from a social housing, we're finding, as the people here said, it's very much a let's wait and see what happens.
Thank you, Stephen. Well, one example, one thought I've had with this, and that is that when we started talking about this, we, as you've seen, we've been discussing using 360 photography as a means of doing that part of that triage, and I think that's, from my point of view, it's immensely sensible to do that. And the other thing with that is that would help the building safety teams who are frustrated that they don't know what's happening within the flats themselves, because they've got no practical way of checking that. And that is building in safety risks, from hoarding and how spaces are being used and all that sort of stuff. And so potentially, I'm seeing that this Awaab's law is another way of justifying why you should be given access internally. You could legitimately take a 360 photo.
So
I was at a meeting yesterday around health and Awaab's law. So it was something called the East West Midlands 5G project, and it was all NHS. It was health and care, and they were talking quite a bit around Awaab's law. And one of the things that is a big hole is how they communicate with the tenants, how the landlords keep communicating with the tenants to see progress. And I know we're moving into that kind of job sheet, that workflow of after you've got an issue, what happens. And we proposed a device where we're monitoring temperature, humidity, and time for the possibility of dew points, but then having a tablet with a camera and a video and a call for action, so they can actually the tenant can notify, and they can do weekly updates to show if the mold is getting worse or getting less, and the landlord being able to have a real-time conversation with the tenant. But there was a cost to that, so they're trying to work out bringing in other parts like health, the NHS, of as Graham said, some of these people are getting seriously ill here, and it's costing the NHS an absolute. But that's not housing's problems today. But the government
Yes.
are trying to bring it together.
So what I'm thinking is that if whoever actually goes out to do the check, whether it's a contractor or whatever, if one of the standard processes is that they've just got a £400 360 camera with them, right, and they just take a 360 photo, right, it takes less than seconds to do, and you've then got something that can then be viewed separately and in context, because the beauty of a 360 photo as opposed to a normal photo is you can relate where it is, and you can then investigate and you can check things afterwards. So that's something that I think is a reasonable. I wanted to just check that the team is okay with that, but I think that's a strong recommendation.
Well, it's a good pointer. It's a great pointer, George, as to the problem within the property, because you'll see an awful lot of things there, but it doesn't take us away from the fact that the people who are looking at it have got to be able to interpret what they're looking at, and that competence area again. Going back to what Stephen was saying before, what we should also remember.
Sorry, but the person competent to do that doesn't have to be on site.
Oh no,
they can be 100 miles away. That's the point with the 360.
Yeah, no, fully understand that, Richard, and I totally agree with you. And the other thing is, like we're finding with the NHS now, that could be done by NI 5 times, million times quicker than what we humans can do, and more competently as well. Because I know.
But I suggest, in terms of what we're going to do, we're aiming towards this guidance that Connor and George have come up with as a rough spec. More than rough, no offense to them. So what do we need to do? My suggestion would be the first thing we can do at a very basic level is sort out what the process should be. Fill in how we fulfill that process, but sort out what the actual process can be. Does that make sense?
Shall I show what Connor sent me?
Can I? Well, yes, but I think yours is in more. Can we go in order? Can Alex go first?
Yeah, please. Yeah, carry on.
I think it's more high level, George. Then come into your detail.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that all right with you, Alex?
Yeah, I'll be really quick on this. Whoops, sorry, sharing everything to the world. Okay, so these are slides which were shown previously. So I'll just be really quick as I bash through these and make sure that I've got you on my screen over there so I can see the audience hiss and boo, audience reaction. So really quickly, so I've put the link into the chat. This is the MHCLG. It's a colorized version of the process that they've laid out. There's essentially 5 steps across the top here. So the suggestion is for damp and mold. Initially, we get the raise request. So this is the tenant reports the problem. I am proposing a strategic view in just a minute, which echoes a lot of the conversation so far. The staff of the landlord have then got to capture the necessary information, take on board information that's been collected. This is mapping to the sort of information management side of things, what the hazard report is, what the property is, what the tenant is. We've then got to go into an assessment phase. MHCLG suggest providing photos, and we've just mentioned the role of AI in that, which is very useful for prioritising the reports that are coming in to assess the severity, and then build the response. So I've got a slide in a second on the service level times, but we know that the responses are very rapid. So you've got to provide a written summary of the investigation, investigate and fix and raise work orders, if appropriate, of course. There's the opportunity to escalate through a complaints process. It might be necessary for the landlord to provide alternative accommodation if the risk is very severe. And then there's going to be data wrapped around the escalation, which ultimately potentially might be required in a legal pack or something like that if you need to defend the handling of the case. Okay, so that's a really high level process. This workflow, which if you're watching the recording, you can now pause, tells you that you've got to react extremely quickly within 24 hours if it's an emergency, deemed to be an emergency risk, or within 10 days, providing written reports and remediating the works, obviously, or decamp the family from the property. So the point I was making back in November as well was the role of IoT, component information for condition, as well as the need to maintain good databases about people and contact details, so that once a person's made a report, then you're able to negotiate with them access to the property and resolve the issues. And then just echoing a little bit, moving from reactive process that's just laid out there to a more proactive approach is, as some organisations are doing, and the initial discussion was interesting because George's angle was fire people need to look after damp. These social landlords are now organising themselves so they've got specialist teams who are looking at these things. They might be under one compliance wrapper, they might be under different directorates, but roles and responsibilities need to be defined. A couple of people have mentioned on the chat identifying at-risk households. So you could just deploy sensors everywhere, but actually the ones that are most risk are going to be at-risk households. So that means residents or other visitors to that property that might suffer, for example, respiratory problems. If you've got families with asthma, etc., anybody who needs an oxygen bottle in a property is going to be somebody that you probably need to put onto your high priority list. Considering the risky archetypes, as Debbie's mentioned about, monitor reports and complaints as a strategic view. What's the trends happening here? Have a look at survey information, because stock condition survey might be returning information about condition, reports of early damp, etc. And look at energy performance certificates. You can bring in energy information from properties. I'd probably now these days add on to IoT sensor information and smart meter data as well, to look at the heating element, the heat energy input into a property. Obviously, ventilation is a separate issue. Use of AI and deployment of sensors are the key points in there. And then the last point I discussed was also about how organisations might judge their maturity on the risk management levels. So lots of people at the moment are running a reactive service that's based around reacting to complaints that are happening. You might now find that some organisations think that they've now got team structures in place, that they've got properly qualified and trained members of staff, that the competencies are there in terms of skills, and that they've got an complaints handling process and an escalation handling process, but you're still doing that perhaps in a reactive way. An indicator that you're at level 2 perhaps is that you're getting performance indicators from your processes to monitor how you're actually moving through that. As things become a bit more defined, the organisation becomes structured around risk management, generally speaking, but specifically about damp and mould. You've got an evolved complaints process, and you're starting to put in those preactive services. So you're going to a property that you think might have at-risk households or be at risk because of archetype, and doing something about that. That might be asset data driven, that might involve sensors, and you'll have both key performance indicators and operational performance indicators. So you'll be able to look at that on a day-to-day or near real-time basis, not just weekly, monthly, quarterly information. And then finally, when you're fully optimized service, then you've got, the mission of the organization is to make sure that, everyone in the organization is driven towards this, and you're in a mode of continuous improvement.
Excellent.
Yeah, this is recorded. I can provide the slides if anybody wants to.
That's really helpful.
Put my email in chat.
Fantastic. Man.
Yeah, just to clarify, Alex, I wasn't thinking that the fire safety people would be overseeing it. I was thinking it would be the building safety people.
Okay, yeah, which is fair enough. I think actually the way it's bracketed is it's all compliance, and you need what I think we've established is damp is another, like structural safety and fire safety. It's another special discipline that we need a team of people who are.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. But the
reason... Now, Nick, are you there?
I think Nick said in the chat he needed to jump off.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
Nick said in the chat he needed to jump off.
Oh, sorry, mate. Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so shall I show?
Yes, very much.
Connor, you know your slides better than me, so do you want to talk us through these?
Well, I suppose what's happening for me is that it's not massively dissimilar to what we've just seen. The customer obviously raises the issue, and then the sort of questions we're posing on that is how, when they're raising the issue, what the process should be. So is it an online questionnaire? Is it over the phone? And having some sort of FaceTime thing. I think there's an idea. There's a set of surveyors from Nova surveyors who have already come up with a script that the customer service centre will go through with the customer that helps identify what the likely cause of the mould is, or the likely type of damp is, or that. So that can help with anybody going out to site knowing what it is that they're going to look at. The next proposed bit is the initial survey, and at least in Wheatley, we're going to be carrying these out. Hopefully, your standard 20% every year of your housing stock, and this is where it could probably branch off into that other sort of workflow we were discussing for the proactive stuff. So the standard size survey, you need the response time that you're looking at as to so you know what your priorities are and your parameters. So I had initially developed at my last job an 800 question survey, but it was all yes, no, good, fair, poor, so that anybody that had sort of students of built environment type things or surveyors would be able to answer them competently, which can then help with the next stage of the competent professional review. As part of that initial survey, and to help with the competent professional review, you'd have the 360 photographs or LiDAR scans, the measurement schedules of windows, radiators, things like that, moisture readings, demographic images, at the standardised whole house assessment, which is that survey. We have reduced it in Wheatley to an external or internal to about 250, 300 questions. So there's scope for bringing it in. And then at that stage, if somebody's reported that, you could deploy the IoTs. You could probably deploy IoTs if you're doing just off the cuff condition surveys. I'm not quite sure how that works, but that's when you deploy the IoTs in the areas where you're seeing the issues. That then provides all the information that you could possibly want for this competent professional to review and diagnose without having to go to site. I suppose in severe cases you're going to have bits where the competent person needs to go out and have a look. The standardised follow-up with remediation depends on the severity of the hazard. You would use the information that you've got to diagnose that hazard, and then once it's been diagnosed, once it's been fixed, once you've got to the end of that process, it's the proposal that you have ongoing monitoring for 12 months. 6 to 12 months. So you go through all the seasons, you go through the different shoulder seasons, and know that you've actually fixed the issue. Because if you can identify from the IoTs the same kind of thing that you were identifying when you had the issue, you'll know that you need to go back in and you can be proactive about that bit. I think that's really what we've got to. So you've got customer raising the issue, an initial survey with installing your IoTs, gathering your information, competent person reviews, creates the reports, your remediation, and then ongoing monitoring. And I think that fits in really. I think the ongoing monitoring is probably something extra onto what Alex has just come up, what Alex just explained. So that's what we used in the previous role. It was well received by housing associations. It was a consultancy business I was in before. It was well received by housing associations. This actually got me the job at Wheatley. So I'm quite confident that it's something that can be grown and scaled and worked on to help. A wee laughing face there. Any questions?
Is that 800 point question survey? That's presumably somebody else's IP. You can't ship that around. Have a think about it.
Technically, because the other business is shut down, technically it's now my IP.
Well, there we go. If you perhaps I'll swap you a copy of my slides for a copy of your question. And how about that?
I think that's excellent, Connor. Yeah.
Yeah, really, absolutely amazing. So you said, Connor, that there was a bit that would needed to be added in, excuse me, in view of what you saw on Alex's slides. What was that?
Yeah, so it's something that I'd kind of touched on earlier when Craig was still on the call. Craig's now gone off to another meeting. And somebody else had pointed out, it might have been David or Graham. There's this bit that's missing from this. This is specifically on Awaab's law. This is what happens when you have the issue raised. But there's the proactive bit that's not here now. It probably follows the same thing. So instead of the customer raises the issue, the proactive bit just goes from the initial survey. So somebody's going in and doing their stock condition survey with their question set, and they identify mold or they identify extreme cold or one of the other category 1 hazards. And then it's either they move to a different survey when they're on site, or they say to the customer when they're there, look, we're going to have to come and do this specific survey. So there's that bit. There's the proactive bit that we need to work on, and I've not done any work on that for this meeting. So there's the proactive bit. This is the reactive bit, which will be compliant. It's the proactive bit that needs to be worked out.
Got it. Can I just ask Alex? Alex, what do you think? Does this work as a more detailed view of what you were doing or what you were showing?
So. Yeah, this is down to the implementation of it, isn't it? So
absolutely.
I didn't specifically talk about competencies, for example. So yes, apologies. I just had a water bottle explode all over me. So, but yeah, it's more detailed, but that's fine. Mine's a high level.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was saying. If you think this follows what you, George, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to ask Alex. Do you know anybody else that's that any of the social landlords that have gone through this process and interpreted the guidance yet?
Well, plenty. I mean, they're all, lots of them are just reporting that they're running it, but they're inundated at the moment with dealing with all of the complaint requests which are coming in. You've absolutely opened up floodgates back in October, and I must admit, late December, since early December, I haven't really been talking to anybody about this off the top of my head, anyway. But every organisation that's got housing stock is affected by the Social Housing Regulation Act, which is the act that is the Awaab's law is in that act, and so it's the law. You have to be following these processes and responding to it. And I guess we need another couple of months to see how people are getting over that initial wave, that comes in, and how they're handling those. And dealing with it before we can draw conclusions. But I'm on the supplier side, so I don't know if any of the other landlords on the call want to comment. Debbie's got a hand up.
Debbie's got a hand.
Debbie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because we're running with, obviously, to keep within the law, we've got our procedure, which is outlined in both of your things. That's exactly what we're doing. The other thing that we did put in our procedure, which is proactive, is we've identified all the at-risk properties that we have within our areas. And then what we've done is matched it against visits. So if any of the high-risk properties have not been visited in the last 12 months, we've generated a call to them to check, to do. It's only a phone call, so it's not a camera, so it's not a survey, but just a touch base, asking them if they've got issues. but we are up to current standards with our stocks, so we know we have got into all our properties within 5 years. That's on a rolling scheme, so we've got full surveys for our properties, but that's the only additional thing we have done, is identified what we deem as the high risk properties, and then done calls if they have had no visits. So if they've had no gas service, if they've had no, electrical test or anything.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
George, we could look at the proactive side, couldn't we? Would that be an idea?
So. Yeah, I think the proactive side is the one that I think we could best help with. I think possibly we pick up on this separately, Connor and Alex, and then we can do something with that if that makes any sense.
Happy with that. Yep.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Right. Okay. We're almost there. Are there any other comments that anybody's got? Anything that you'd like us to look at?
I've got something I'd like to share if I can. Has anyone heard of the Swiss cheese model?
Yep. Carry on, please.
Well, we've developed one which is quite basic to show people that in essence how these mold outbreaks can, and if I just go on and share my screen, I can share it with you. How do I do it? Here we go. This is going to be difficult. Share. There we are. My goodness, I've got that many things in the background. Which one is it? There we go. Can people see that?
Yeah.
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 Well, if I just start from current slide. When we've been doing the training, we're trying to get people to understand the different aspects of it. So going back to building design and fabric, it's the old stuff: adequate ventilation, proper insulation, material resistant condensation and mold, and then some of the control measures you put in. And as we go through it, you then come into building maintenance and how the holes in the cheese, if they start to align up and things start to pass through those lines. And I mean, the model was used in the NHS quite extensively on their outbreaks of various things within the systems to make sure that they've got control in. So you're building maintenance, your regular inspection, prompt repairs, annual condition surveys, then your failures, delayed repairs, missed issues, poor workmanship, resident behaviour and awareness, lack of understanding, can't afford heating, overcrowding. Then you've got no sensor data, which we've spoken about, poor data analysis, which we've done, and privacy concerns, because that is obviously an issue. It's is it Big Brother looking after me? And then the environmental monitoring and data. And this is things that landlords need to have, which are clear policies, staff training, governance aligned with Awaab's law. And then the old adages of, siloed departments, delayed responses, and a lack of accountability. And it's amazing how that is still prevalent within social housing. And then, if those holes align up, you get a mold outbreak. Or you can use this model for any of the different things that hazards that affect. So anyway, sorry, I'll stop sharing when it allows me to.
Good.
I don't know if that helps. Sorry, I'm going backwards here now. I can't get the button to get me out. Escape. There we go. Am I out of it?
Yeah, you're out of it. Yeah, you're fine.
Lovely. Thank you. Not technically savvy on Teams.
Tom Porter from Wythenshawe. Have you got anything on this? Maybe Tom.
Sorry, I was just trying to get the volume back on. Not a lot really. A lot of it's been covered. What we're finding out with Insure, we've got all our processes in place for reporting it, investigating, and so on. But a lot of the surveyors, when they come back, say it's a lot of it's due to lifestyle choices. You know, putting clothes on radiators, keeping everything shut. Is there any advice apart from what we probably give now about do you do things differently in your home? Any enforcement that we can use?
I don't know about enforcement. At least in Scotland, building regulations state that you need to be able to dry your clothes internally. I don't know if that's the same for England. But there's sort of resident engagement and sort of educational documents that might be able to be provided to say if you are drying your clothes internally, open the window, keep the trickle vents on, or use with the mechanical ventilation. One of the other issues we've found is that sometimes the mechanical ventilation isn't always connected properly, or the airflow rate's just not good enough. Anyway, and that's a byproduct of the construction type that it is. So I don't know about enforcement, but certainly there's probably educational stuff that could be sent out for residents if that's what you're finding.
Right. Do you think we got our building safety booklets going out by the end of March, which we send to all our residents, just giving them advice on building safety? I might speak to someone about maybe putting a page in that so that they can say they've definitely received information from us. I think I'll do that. I'll add something on mould and damp onto the building safety booklet. Thank you for that.
Good. Okay, so George, you and Connor and Alex are gonna look at proactive for us.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So in terms of this group, next meeting.
I guess the question is, do people think it's been worthwhile today? Because otherwise, we obviously don't want to have meetings just for the sake of it. If you'd like to attend another meeting, could you give us a thumbs up? So Debbie, nobody else?
Me try and find that one.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
Same here. Yeah, I think it's worthwhile anyway. Can't find a thumbs up.
All right. Okay.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll arrange another one then.
We'll sort something out, and then we can. You guys can report back on that, can't you?
Sure.
Okay.
Excellent. Sorry.
Sorry, no, I found the thumbs up. Put it in the chat.
That's a posh one, isn't it?
Yeah, it could have been an issue if you didn't want to carry on, Connor. Okay, guys, great meeting as ever. See you next time.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Cheers.